Welcome back to our series on America's westward expansion. Today, we'll be discussing a pivotal aspect of this era: the complex and often fraught relationships between Native American nations and the United States government, as well as the conflicts that arose from these interactions. As the United States expanded its territory, it encountered numerous Native American tribes, each with their own distinct culture, language, and traditions. The U.S. government's policies towards these tribes were often marked by a mix of coercion, manipulation, and violence. One notable example is the Indian Removal Act of 1830, which led to the forced relocation of tens of thousands of Native Americans from their ancestral lands to Indian territory, resulting in significant loss of life and cultural heritage. The discovery of gold and other natural resources on Native American land further complicated these relationships. The U.S. government's desire to exploit these resources led to the signing of treaties that often favored the interests of white settlers over those of Native Americans. For instance, the Fort Laramie Treaty of 1851, which established boundaries for the Sioux, Cheyenne, and Arapaho tribes, was repeatedly violated by the U.S. government as it sought to expand its territory and access natural resources. The construction of the Transcontinental Railroad also had a profound impact on Native American tribes. The railroad brought an influx of settlers and goods, disrupting traditional ways of life and leading to conflicts over land and resources. The Sioux tribe, in particular, resisted the construction of the railroad, which they saw as a threat to their sovereignty and way of life. The U.S. government responded with force, leading to numerous skirmishes and battles, including the infamous Battle of Little Bighorn. The U.S. government's policies towards Native Americans were also shaped by the idea of assimilation. The boarding school system, established in the late 19th century, aimed to assimilate Native American children into white culture by forcing them to abandon their traditional languages, customs, and beliefs. This traumatic experience had a lasting impact on Native American communities, leading to intergenerational trauma and cultural suppression. As the United States continued to expand its territory, it became increasingly clear that the U.S. government's policies towards Native Americans were rooted in a desire to erase their cultures and identities. The Dawes Act of 1887, which divided Native American land into individual allotments, was a prime example of this policy. The act aimed to break up tribal lands and encourage Native Americans to adopt European American farming practices, leading to the loss of traditional ways of life and cultural heritage. The conflicts between Native American tribes and the U.S. government ultimately led to the establishment of reservations, where Native Americans were forcibly relocated and confined. Life on the reservations was marked by poverty, poor living conditions, and limited access to education and health care. The U.S. government's policies towards Native Americans continued to evolve, but the legacy of historical trauma and cultural suppression persisted. In conclusion, the complex and often fraught relationships between Native American nations and the United States government were shaped by a mix of coercion, manipulation, and violence. From the Indian Removal Act to the boarding school system, the U.S. government's policies towards Native Americans were marked by a desire to erase their cultures and identities. The legacy of these interactions continues to be felt today, with many Native American communities still struggling to preserve their cultural heritage and sovereignty. That's all for today. Join us next time on History with Herodotus as we continue our series on America's westward expansion with Episode 7, Closing the Frontier.